right. Fuck Elon. Fuck Elon.
Dude. All right.
Max and I, we talked this morning to coordinate our outfit, and I wanted Max to wear black, and Max wanted me to wear white. So we agreed.
Yeah. Have a seat. All righty. Michael Saylor. Giga Chad.
Max Keiser, High Priest of Bitcoin. Father, I have sinned.
My first question is, what does it feel like to be a newbie?
You know, I was going to tell you, I realized that I first bought Bitcoin 1 year ago yesterday, and so this is the end of my rookie year.
Right on. All right, I wanted to get into that. So going back to around 2014, your friend Eric Weiss, he was talking to you about Bitcoin. You kind of ignored it. Then in 2020, he mentioned it again. And within a few weeks, you were buying tens of thousands of Bitcoin for you and your company. What the fuck happened?
Well, I guess I lost faith in all of my traditional investment strategies. You know, I didn't really think much about the dollar and about inflation. I thought there was no inflation, and I thought I could just sit and own big tech companies and the world would work itself out. And I guess around March, everything changed, and the monetary inflation rate tripled, and it became pretty clear that the big tech trade was a crowded trade. You know, at the point that my niece in her early 20s was telling me about Apple stock, you know, I figured that maybe it wasn't cutting edge. So I looked around and I discovered Bitcoin, and when I discovered Bitcoin, I thought, well, this is digital gold on a big tech monetary network, and it's going to grow by a factor of 100. And then I thought, well, I should buy as much as I can. And what I tell people even this day is I was buying it, and I was thinking, I have to buy as fast as I can, as much as I can, because someone else might figure this out before, and then I won't be able to. And
okay, that's really interesting for the shareholders. But, I mean, my understanding is that you were visited by the ghost of Satoshi at night and came to you in a dream and converted you. That's not the story.
Yeah, Satoshi speaking through all of her or his disciples on YouTube.
Your laser eyes are pointed right at my brain right now. Are you stealing my private keys?
No, you should keep your private keys.
This should save me.
I don't want your private keys.
Really? Okay, well, we just met, so I guess that would be a bit forward. Let's move on to some recent comments you've made. You were on talking about Bill Maher recently, and you said the following: there's something cruel and tasteless about a rich white male who wants to deprive billions of poor men, women, and children in Africa, Asia, South America of basic human right of economic self-preservation so they can generate a few laughs. That's a very kind of profound thing to say. And can you just talk a little bit about this idea of property rights for billions around the world and what Bitcoin offers and how you see that?
You know, I think after you study Bitcoin, the light bulb goes off, and what I realized is anybody on earth that wanted to own anything, that wanted to own some property, has a choice. You can buy land somewhere, but someone can tax it and take it away from you, You can buy gold, but someone can take it away from you. You can buy stocks, but you can never take possession of it. You can buy debt, you can never take possession of it. You can buy jewelry, people will take it away from you. And Bitcoin is the apex property of the human race. It's the first time we figured out how to create true property that you can take possession of with full custodial rights, that's least likely to be impaired, that's most mobile. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter if you have $1 billion. If you have $1 billion, you can buy a building in Manhattan or Bitcoin, you'd rather have the Bitcoin. And it doesn't matter if you have $387. If you have $387, you can still buy the Bitcoin, take it anywhere. And if you compare that to buying silver or gold or land or a stock, your custodial and your property rights are impaired by everything else. And so I think Bitcoin is truly a seminal invention of the human race, because for the first time in human history, we can grant property rights to 8 billion people. And that's what I think is cool.
Right. Is Bitcoin designed to attract attacks? It seems that it is, and the level of attacks are rising to the state level, et cetera. And is it a bug or a feature?
I think that which does not kill Bitcoin makes it stronger.
Right. All right, let's talk about energy for a second. So total energy, global energy production is about 160,000 terawatt hours per year. I'm going to ask the audience right now, how much of that goes into Bitcoin? The choices are 10%, 5%, 1%, or 1/10 of 1%. Of that, how many people think it's 10%? Raise your hand. 5%? 1%? Right, this poll sucks. 1/10 of 1%? Right, and as you point out, a third of that, 50,000 terawatts per hour, is wasted. You point out that literally Bitcoin is running on a quarter of the wasted energy. It's so little of that energy goes into Bitcoin, and yet we have this FUD, this ESG thing going on. What's your current thinking on this?
I think that Bitcoin is an extraordinarily disruptive, beneficial technology to the entire energy industry. And as I studied it, it became clear to me that it's the highest value use of intermittent energy. It's the highest value use of renewable energy. It's the highest value use of wasted or stranded energy. And it's just the highest value use of energy, period. And it's a solution to developing power plants in remote locations. It's a solution to driving up efficiency of plants and driving down cost. And it's a solution to solving any kind of challenging energy problem. And I think as the world understands it, they're going to embrace it.
The recent news out of China is that a lot of mining is leaving China now. It's coming to the U.S. They're shutting down their coal production, et cetera. Is this, how do you see this developing in terms of how mining is going to be distributed around the world? Let me ask you this. It seems that if we went on the global Bitcoin standard, total global energy use would be cut by an enormous amount, because you're defunding central banks, you're defunding fiat money, you're potentially defunding huge military operations just by going on a Bitcoin standard. Isn't that the greenest thing anyone could possibly do?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Look, I think Bitcoin is the most efficient use of energy that the human race has yet come up with. I looked at the annual report of Google, and Google puts about $170 or $180 billion of energy into their business to create $1.8 trillion of an asset. Bitcoin puts $4 billion of energy and capital investment to create an $800 billion asset. So Bitcoin, you put in $1, you get out $200. Google, you put in $1, you get out $10. I studied the entire S&P index and all the annual reports. You put in $1, you get out $4. If you look at a bank, JP Morgan, they spend $1 to generate $3.8 of value. And if you study an airline, they put in $1 to get out 40 cents. So Bitcoin You know, it's you know, some 20 times more efficient than Google, and is 50 times more efficient than a normal company, and is 500 times more efficient than real energy producers. And I think Bitcoin miners are underappreciated. I mean, they're the path of you know, they're the first line of defense against the entire network. They're securing the network. And the way that Bitcoin mining works is they're finding the jurisdiction that has the most political support. So Bitcoin miners are finding political capital. They're finding energy capital. They're finding the cheapest energy. They're finding engineering capital. They're engineering these beautiful Bitcoin mining centers that are heat engineered, very complicated. They're finding technical capital in terms of semiconductors and ASICs. They're putting all that together with the raw energy in order to provide the security to the network, and they're migrating continually to the cheapest power, the most supported political jurisdiction, and they're instigating upgrades in the technology. And they're doing that dynamically without being told to do it, to the benefit of everyone in the entire ecosystem. I think that's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Right on. So when Christine Lagarde, who's running the European Central Bank right now, refers to Bitcoin as an escape hatch, what does she mean? Is that she's seeing it as a negative, but I would posit that maybe you would see that in a different light.
Well, I mean, when you say Bitcoin is savings technology, you know, in a world where everyone's dissipating their energy, the most rational thing is to conserve yours. And so Bitcoin is conservation of energy. You can store your life force in fiat, and you know you're going to lose 1% to 2% a month. You might lose 4% a month in a collapsing currency or faster. You can store all of your economic energy in credit, and that's not much better. You can store it in equity, but then you take the risk of a company, and you never know when. Like, look what just happened to AMC yesterday, right?
Right.
If you're going to store your money in AMC or Viacom or Bitcoin, at least Bitcoin has no CEO to print 10 million more Bitcoin overnight, whereas that might happen with an equity. So when we talk about an escape hatch, if you're looking for a safe haven, I see Bitcoin as the most secure, most reliable, most certain thing in the entire economic universe. And if you're looking for some place where you can store your life force or your economic energy, you know, there's no real question. Right? Bitcoin, you can store it and take it with you wherever you want, or you can put it in land and estate subject to a governor, a mayor, a country, or you can put it on the stock exchange and you can worry about what the CEO or the board of directors will do the next day.
Michael, let me ask you this. Some CEOs, some academics, some economists, they look at Bitcoin and they are emboldened by it. They see the future in it. They see the possibilities in it. Other academics or CEOs or academics, they look at it and they become frightened by it. They develop Bitcoin derangement syndrome, and they seem genuinely threatened by it. What goes on? What happens? Is something in the mind, or they're not prepared for it? You're now on the front line of this thing. You're very visible. You're the CEO. You're the guy. You're talking to them. What explains this phenomenon, the Bitcoin derangement syndrome phenomenon?
I think that if you're comfortable in your environment, if you have plenty of wealth and you're in a comfortable situation, then it's in your best interest just to assume that things will go on the way they are. And you can't imagine a change in the underlying physical circumstances of your environment. You know, like if the ship is sinking and you know the ship is sinking, then you become enamored with the lifeboat. But if you don't know the ship is sinking and you've got the luxury cabin on the ship and someone comes and knocks on your door and says, you got to run out and jump in the water right now, you think that it's a nagging problem. So to appreciate Bitcoin, you got to put in the work, but you have to have the motivation. And I think that some people put in a lot of work, learned it and understood it, and then of course they're very passionate about it. Others, they have the motivation, but they haven't put in the work. And then a lot of people don't have the motivation, right? It's not going to change their life. And so they can't conceive of their worldview changing or sinking because they're just like whenever I see anybody criticizing, I say, well, what's your solution to people in Argentina? Right? It's like when you're in New York and Manhattan and you're in a cocktail party and then you're criticizing this. Like, what are you saying to everybody else in Africa or South America or Asia or Venezuela? What is your solution to them? And I think that Bitcoin critics, as a general rule, they all fall in this category. They all just criticize something that they don't understand that's new. And I've never seen a critic say, I hate Bitcoin. I think that people in the rest of the world should buy, no one says they should buy Apple stock to save their life savings in Africa to avoid having it be stolen by the local government. Nobody says that. So if you don't give a constructive solution to the problem, then you're just reflexively rejecting a new thing.
Are you essentially a corporate heretic? And what I mean by that is in corporate CEO suites, they borrow money and they buy back their own stock, and their executive options go up a lot in value and they cash out. You looked at this situation, you said, oh, the ice cube on my balance sheet's melting, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm even going to borrow money to buy Bitcoin. It seems almost like a speculative attack on the central bank itself. Is that a fair characterization? What are your comments?
I think for a decade, conventional treasury strategy was I buy short-dated treasuries, and in order to get my stock up, I buy back my equity and leverage up my cash flows. I watched 99 out of 100 of my competitors all go out of business pursuing that strategy. What they do is they either they do a dilutive acquisition where they buy another company and they keep bolting on acquisitions until they've got 37 companies and it all falls apart, and then they sell themselves or take themselves private, or they keep buying their stock back and leveraging up. And one way is decapitalizing the company, the other way is diluting the company. What I was doing with Bitcoin was I was saying, I don't want to decapitalize the company. I want to keep the capital or grow the capital, but I want to put an asset on the balance sheet. And I think a big breakthrough is I can convert my cash from a liability to an asset, and then we realize that if that asset's going to go up by more than 10% a year, and you can borrow money at 5% or 4 or 3 or 2, then you should pretty much borrow as much money as you can and flip it into the asset, and why wouldn't you?
Right, but it does kind of call time on this ultra-low interest rate policies by the central banks that seem to be there only to benefit a few select at the top while disenfranchising the many. And if all corporations did what you guys are doing, it would seem to disrupt the central banks, which in fact would then help Bitcoin. Is there a virtuous cycle here? Should central banks take a more politicized stance and do this for that reason as a way to get rid of possibly the greatest threat we have, and that is the central banks? And I'm tacitly having you agree with this thought, quite unfairly, with this question. However, I think you see what I'm driving at. Is there a political angle to this at all? Are you allowed to say that?
I think we can all go forward constructively together. And look, Ray Dalio says he'd rather own Bitcoin than a bond. There's $100 trillion in bonds. That was a big statement that he made just a week ago.
Right.
Corporate treasuries are holding bonds. As people rotate bonds and cash into Bitcoin, price discovery will return to bonds, and that means that you can buy an annuity for a fair price, and that's good for the world. It would be good to be able to buy a bond that had a good annuity stream. I think the price discovery will return to stocks, and you'll be able to buy a stock that pays a decent dividend that's less risky, and that will be good for the world. I think that you'll be able to buy, if we demonetize residential real estate, you'll be able to buy a house at half the price that's twice as good. That'll be good to the world. And so I think that the virtuous cycle is Bitcoin is demonetizing gold. Your jewelry will be twice as good, half as expensive. Is demonetizing real estate. Your house will be twice as big, half as expensive. Is demonetizing debt. You will be able to buy an annuity that yields 8% interest with no risk. Is demonetizing equity in ETFs. You'll be able to invest in a company and not pay 50 times revenue and take a risk. You'll be able to invest reasonably. And so Bitcoin fixes everything. And it fixes... And if you wish me to make a political statement, the political statement would be, it fixes governments because as it fixes everything else, governments act rationally. And right now, you can see governments acting rationally, right? In weak countries, their currency collapses to zero, and they have to adopt a new currency. Right now, they're adopting the dollar. I see a world where 8 billion people have a mobile device, and they have a digital wallet, and they have a digital currency like a dollar or a euro, and then they have a digital asset, Bitcoin. And Bitcoin links together 8 billion people, links together 100 million companies. It synchronizes the world across political jurisdiction, and it returns rationality to the entire financial system, and it returns freedom and property rights to the human race.
All right. Now, you've said on occasions, it's very interesting, you seem to allude to or refer to Bitcoin as something of a new life form. And sometimes you refer to it as evolving. You say nothing can compete with Bitcoin as money unless it's a unique, beautiful creature that does something unique. It's like plankton or a lobster. You refer to one of the shitcoins out there, Ethereum, as a shark duck that lives in trees. Right? So you use these life-affirming metaphors quite often, but the idea, the reason I bring this up is because the difficulty adjustment, the way it acts, seems like it's alive in a lot of ways. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think that a crypto is a living creature. We've released life in cyberspace, and Bitcoin, you could think of as a plant life or a plankton. It's a base level life. It's not the most complicated creature. It's not. You could think of it, some of the other DeFis, they want to be animals and run around, and Bitcoin wants to be greenery and cover the entire earth. Once you've released the DNA of the Bitcoin, you just have to let it fester everywhere in the world and let it be it. I think the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is it's done. There's no reason why it can't become a $100 trillion, $200, $300 trillion creature. And the fundamental difference, I think, with a crypto asset like Bitcoin versus what other people are trying to do in this space is the whole idea of a crypto asset is I put my monetary energy, my life force into it, and then I let it live for the next 1,000 years. And it's okay just to be alive for 1,000 years. It's okay to be, what's wrong with being rich forever, right? I mean, and that's what Bitcoin is. And then all of the innovation will take place at the layer 2. I think when Square builds Bitcoin, when PayPal builds Bitcoin into its layer 2, as people build Lightning applications into their applications on the layer 2, I think they're doing all the beautiful, intricate, functional, high-performance things, and they take the risk, they have the upside, but we don't impair the underlying base layer. The life force of the world is Bitcoin. We just got to let it be and respect it for what it is and not mess with it.
Now, so let me ask you this. So you are, I believe, the longest sitting CEO of a tech company in America. Active CEO, continuous, going 20 years. And you've been around the block a few times. You know the industry. And this is like a second life for you, I would say. Was it a shock to suddenly come upon this technology? And really, there's been a rebirth for MicroStrategy, and for this industry. How do you, on a personal level, was that a surprise to you, and how did you react to that?
You know, I mean, they say we say Bitcoin is hope, and Bitcoin fixes everything. I think it definitely was the case with our company. I mean, our stock was at $90 a share. We were $120 a share when we actually decided to embark on this strategy, and it imbued life into the company. Life into the employee morale was dramatically boosted. You know, we just had our best first quarter we've had in a decade. I was ready to quietly retire. I had not posted on Facebook, not posted on Instagram, not posted on Twitter for 4 years, just about. And then Bitcoin happened to me, and I got dragged into the limelight again. And here I am.
Right. Yeah, it's really an incredible story. And so you mentioned something I was curious about, the culture at the company. You know, the CEO kind of establishes the mood, the culture of the company. So the Bitcoin now has changed the culture. You've seen a change in what's going on at MicroStrategy in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the employees are really fired up.
Would you say that that's another selling point? In other words, when you talk to other CEOs, you say, oh, the stock's great, this asset's great, melting ice cube is great. But you know what? The culture at our company is also great. I think you have 2,000 employees. It's a big company. It's also a huge benefit there. Is that another point that needs to get across to these CEOs that might be sitting on the fence?
You know, Bitcoin is a technical imperative, it's an economic imperative, and it's a moral imperative. And if you want to revitalize your company, then you need to embrace it, right? And we see that example. If I have $1 billion on the balance sheet and it's in cash, I'm losing $200 million a year. You're draining money out the balance sheet. And if it's not on the P&L, you're not bringing it in on that side. So you're sucking energy out of the company with the conventional treasury strategy. And when we flipped, we started injecting energy into the company. It's like jacking your company into the electric power grid. If you look at successes like Square and PayPal, by them plugging into Bitcoin, it injected energy into their P&Ls. I mean, and they're just wonderful success stories in the industry. And when we injected, are you doing something good for 8 billion people? Like, here's an interesting thing. I go on CNBC, and I look on Twitter, and I find like my interviews run 750,000 times on Twitter. And I said to my friend Eric, I said, what's CNBC's audience? And he goes, oh, they only have about 180,000 people watching. And then I said, how did this play against other stories, okay? The CEO of ExxonMobil went on CNBC to talk about the most important thing in the business. He had 4,000 views. The CEO of Apple Computer goes on CNBC, 12,000 views. Barry Diller goes on CNBC and he talks about how he hates Apple Store and how the entire mobile app ecosystem is wrecked, 12,000 views. And so I think the story here is Bitcoin is hope for 8 billion people. If your company is going to be meaningful to the world, do something to spread Bitcoin. And if your company is sitting on a balance sheet that's investing their money into an asset which is losing 20% of its value every year, you know, here's a good idea, right? Stop the bleeding, right? Just stop the bleeding.
Right. So finally, let's just talk about the cyber hornets. On your Twitter, the lead tweet is the mentions of cyber hornets, the plebs, the meme artists, the ground forces, the people who are fighting every day in the trenches, who are fighting for those 10 Satoshis, 20 Satoshis, who are spinning the wheel over its fold for another, 20 Satoshis. How important are they to this Renaissance 2.0?
I think that the reason that Bitcoin is going to win is because of the community ethos. And when I refer to cyber hornets, yeah, I refer to everybody on Twitter and everybody in the community that's educating the world and defending Bitcoin. Yeah, and they're the loud in-your-face cyber hornets. But I was also thinking about every Bitcoin miner running a Bitcoin mining rig everywhere on Earth, and they're fighting for the network. And I was thinking about everybody running a node. And I think about a node is like an altar to Satoshi in your house. As long as everybody is running that node, they're defending the network and they're defending the movement. And I was thinking about every company, and I was thinking about every single technology that integrates into Bitcoin. I was thinking about every analyst and every politician and every journalist that's defending, speaking out for, educating, or supporting this network. And it's happening in every country. In Korean, in Japanese, in Spanish, in Russian, everywhere on Earth. And, one thing that I just love is, if you go on television and you're the CEO and someone says, what do you think about Bitcoin? I think, okay, I'm going to talk about this and try to explain to the world why this is good for the Earth, good for technology, the future of humanity. And then when I get done, I go home and I turn on the television, there's another Bitcoin CEO. And then the next morning, there's another Bitcoin CEO, and the next day there's an analyst, and the next day there's a politician, and I just think that's so great to be in a community. Every one of them is a cyber hornet. They're all fighting for Bitcoin, and when someone falls, someone else will stand up and carry the banner and take it forward. And I don't think you can say that about anything else on this earth.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man, Michael Saylor. Let's give it up.
Thank you.
For the Sailor Man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. All righty.
This is Mexico.